Shalom Aleichem, Rabotai. Welcome to our Wednesday class on Yalkut Yosef. We are in the halachot of Shabbat. We recently finished Muktzeh, and we started talking about the dinim of Tefilah, Friday night Tefilah. Last time we spoke about at what point of the Tefilah do we accept Shabbat. We explained the differences between the Mekubalim and the Pashtanim, whether it's in Balchum, Moshe Shabbat, Boi Kala. We spoke about those points. The next topic that Yalkut Yosef chooses to speak about is about the Kaddish and the Baruch. So right before Arvit Shabbat begins, there's the L'Shem Yichud Kudsha Baruch Hu, some say some don't, and then there's a Kaddish and Baruch Hu Hashem Mevorach. The minhag is that even though on Yamim Tovim, and even though on Yamei Chol, we do not stand up for this Kaddish and this Baruch Hu, but on Shabbat, the custom is to stand on the Kaddish and the Baruch Hu, make a Baruch Haba. We stand because, as we learned, there's a Tosefet, there's an added aspect of our soul that joins us in. It's called Tosefet Ruach in that moment. So we stand up to accept it and to honor it. However, he says on Yom Tov, we don't need to. Now, you may ask, well, on Yom Tov, we don't get a Tosefet Neshama, we don't get something added into our soul. So, Farshim talk about this, but most likely the explanation is that the level of elevation of our soul on Shabbat is a higher level of elevation that when we have on Yom Tov, and therefore the custom is to stand for it on Shabbat and not on Yom Tov.
Ziv, I have a question. Regardless if it's Shabbat or not, are you allowed to, if you're sitting, are you allowed to get up in the middle of a Kaddish if you forget to stand?
Yeah, of course.
Because someone told me one time it's not good to either sit in the middle of Kaddish if you're standing or.
Okay. So regarding Kaddish, sitting down in Kaddish is only allowed after the first Chamesh Amenim. יתגדל ויגדל שמי רבה, אמן. בעלמא דיבר חיותי, נפח וכהנה ויקרב משיחי. בחי יכול, יש שמי רבה מברך שמן לקודשה בריחו, לאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. After he says לאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן, what is called a Chatzi Kaddish, if you want to sit down, now you can. Until then, if you do not sit down. All right? Don't sit down in the middle of a Kaddish. But once you get to that part, if it's Titkabal or Yeheshlama or Al Yisrael, it would be okay to sit down. But yeah, in those five, if you're standing up, do not sit down.
Okay.
Wait, Ziv, are you referring to the person saying Kaddish or people listening Kaddish or both?
The people listening to the Kaddish. Even though you're a Sephardi and Sephardim do not have to stand up in Kaddish Yeshlama or in Kaddish Al Yisrael, right? We don't have to stand for these Kaddishim. Ashkenazim do. We're going to talk about it right now. However, if you already stood up when the Kaddish began, you cannot sit down until you finish the half of the Kaddish. Ba'amiran ba'alma. All right? After the half, you could sit. Some think that you cannot sit throughout the whole Kaddish, and they don't know that really the important part is the first half. After that, you can sit down. So now, he's going to say something very interesting. There's a difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. Ashkenazim stand up for every Kaddish. However, Sfaradim don't have to. But he says, if you are a Sephardi and you are praying in an Ashkenazi minyan, and now people are standing up for Kaddish, or standing up for Shir Shel Yom, or whatever they do, if they're all standing up, he says, don't be different, don't be shoneh, or it's called Yoshev ben ha'omedim. Don't be a sitter when everybody's standing. I mean, don't stand out. So that's a halacha that has also a beautiful context to it. Like Jews, don't be different. You gotta learn how to blend. You gotta look normal. Don't do strange things. So even though you're Sephardi and your custom is to sit down, if everybody now is standing up, don't be Yoshev ben ha'omedim. Don't be different than them. I want to say in parentheses, even though I didn't see that he wrote this down, that if the minyan is a mixed minyan, and in Ra'anana it's very common, even though you're an Ashkenazi minyan, you'll have 20% Sfardim, 30% Sfardim. Sometimes it's the other way around, but less, because Ashkenazi does not want to pray usually so long, and the Sfardim take about half an hour to 20 minutes long each Tefilah. So you won't find so many Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. But you will find Sfaradim that are in a rush that go to Ashkenazi minyanim, right? It's understandable. So what do we do over there? So as Yalkut Yosef, if they're all standing up, you have to stand up. Even though you don't stand up for Kaddish, now you're amongst them. However, what is emphasized is that Ben Ha'omdim, if everybody is standing up, but if there are already a bunch of people in this minyan that are Sfaradim anyway and they're sitting down, even though the minhag makom is to stand up, I don't have to follow the minhag makom. I just have to not look different. If there are enough Sfaradim sitting down, I don't look different. Even if there's one, two more, we're already a group and it's understood. So you can't sit down. But you come to a new place, you don't know anyone, you're usually sitting down, everybody's standing up, don't be different. Yeah, but I don't have to stand up for Kaddish. No. Al tiyeh yoshev b'na'omrim. Don't be a sitter amongst the people that are standing up.
Dave, I have another question. So I pray Mincha Arvid with Syrians, so they're Sephardic, but they have their own set of minhagim, I guess.
Yeah?
The mourner says the Yehei Shlama Kaddish sometimes with the Chazan.
Really?
Like it's not, yeah, it's actually it's a rabbi that
The Titkabal, the Kaddish Titkabal?
no before Shmona Esrei of Mincha, there's a Kaddish,
Yeah.
right? And the
After
mourner, yeah, half a Kaddish.
he
So the
said,
Chazan is saying it, and then the mourner's also following along and saying it.
I've never seen
And
that.
for Arvit, before Baruch Hu, there's a Kaddish, he also says it, the
Yeah.
mourner.
Interesting. Never seen that. Okay. So what's the Sheila?
I'm saying if you're a mourner in that minyan and they're saying it, you say this Kaddish if they're all saying it?
Never faced that question, but I personally wouldn't say it. That Kaddish is meant for the Chazan. I don't know what their reason for their custom is. That Kaddish is meant for the Chazan. The Kaddish for the mourner is the Kaddish, really it's Kaddish al Israel, right? But a lot of people, their minhag is also to say Kaddish Yesh Lama at the end of each Tefilah. So, right? So you say those.
You know what? I'm going to ask the rabbi that does it. He actually says this. He's in mourning too, and he's not the chazan, and he says it. So I'll ask him today why he
I've
says it.
seen what you're describing at the end. I've prayed with people that at the end of the Tefilah, their custom is to do half a Kaddish. Moroccans. And half a Kaddish, the Chazan says, and the mourners say it with him. But it's really like for the Avelim, like it's a half a Kaddish. It's not part of the elevation before the Amidah. That elevation that we do before the Amidah is for the Chazan. So I don't know why the Syrians do it. Please, if you find out, let us know. But if you ask me, I would definitely not say it with them together. That's not our custom. Okay. Now, regarding the Tefilah, Vayichulu Hashamayim va'aretz, right? So he brings down a chida. The chida was Rabbeinu Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was a great Kabbalist that lived 250, 300 years ago, something like that. And he wrote maybe over 80 books. Chida. We don't have all of them, but we have, I think, around 50 of his books, something like that. Great Mikubal. And you see him in the halacha world, in the Kabbalah world, in the story, everything. In fact, there was a time where he was put in prison and he had to write a book because he had nothing to do. He was in prison cell. So he took papers and he started writing from his mind. He said, what book can I write when I'm in prison? I don't have my sefarim. I can't do halakha. I don't have midrashim. What did he do? He started writing down a book called Shem HaGdolim. It has two parts, Shem HaGdolim, Shmot HaGdolim. And those books are basically names. One of them is names of famous books, and one of them is name of people. Thousands of people throughout history, from Adam HaRishon until our generation. You went through the Gdolim of each generation, this rabbi and this rabbi and this rabbi, and wrote a summary about him. All from his mind, thousands. We have these books until today. I think that was one of the greatest people that lived in the last generations. I heard Rabbi Ben Chaim was saying that when Rav Ovadia passed away, he said he was probably the greatest person since the Chidah. That's the language of Rabbi Ben Chaim, which is, by the way, in Israel right now, giving a speech in Netiv, in the Shiva, where a lot of Mashalis are there. Anyway, back to what he says. So that's Chidah says that when we say on Friday night after Amidah, "Vaychulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzeva'am," what is that? That's a testimony. This Vaychulu is very important. We'll see soon that if you missed it, you have to complete it. It's a testimony about what happened in Shemayim, in the creation of the world. Vaychulu hashamayim v'shamayim vaychal Elokim b'yom shvi. Hashem stopped on the seventh day. We're testifying to how Hashem created the world. So what does the Chidah say? He says, "Ata me'id al ma'aseh shamayim va'aretz." You're testifying right now what happened when Hashem created the world. And when you give a testimony, you cannot be a Rasha. Rasha is not someone that's evil. Halachic Rasha means someone that is not good with the Torah and the mitzvot. He's not keeping the mitzvot. So since you're a Rasha, how can you be, your testimony is not accepted? So says the Chidah, right before Vaychulu hashamayim va'aretz, do a little tshuva. In your mind, say, Hashem, I should be better. I want to be closer to you. By doing that, he says, you are now becoming a tzaddik. It's enough that you thought it in your mind. You don't have to run now and change all your actions. Hopefully it's a real tshuva and you will. But the idea is once you're me'aher tshuva, already you're not under that category of a rasha, and now your testimony can be valid. So this is something practical to all of us that we learned today, that if we remember, our tefillah could look different. Right before Vaychulu, after we finish the Amidah, and the Chazal says, Vaychulu Hashem Hayat, take 1 second to say, Hashem, I want to be better. Boom. That's it. Now your testimony, according to the Chidah, becomes glat kosher. That's a good tip for him. Now, there's a book called Sefer HaPardes. Sefer HaPardes is a book written by Rashi. Rashi was lived about 1,000 years ago. And over there he says that it requires 2 people to bring a edut, which makes sense. Just like we learn in the Mishnayot throughout Shas, whenever you want to give a testimony, it's not enough to have one egg. You need 2 edim. You need 2. So when you say Vaychulu Hashemayim, if you're giving a testimony, you can't do it alone. So according to Sefer HaPardes, Vaychulu cannot be said alone. You always have to have another person with you. Some disagree and say no. It's a testimony that even one person can say. So says the Yalkut Yosef, if you missed it, you prayed a long Amidah, and they already said Vaychulu Hashemayim Ba'aretz. If you can find someone easily that will say it with you, sometimes you see people that know the halakha, and they prayed long, and they go to their friend, can you say Vaychulu with me, and Vaychulu Hashemayim? After Alenu, they stay and they say it together. He said if it's easy for you to do that, do that. But if not, don't think that you missed it. You could even say it alone. He says, and definitely, if you see it coming, don't say, oh, let me finish my Amidah quickly so I can join the crowd. No, because you have to rely on to say it alone. Better not to lose your kavanah in the Tefilah. Focus on the Tefilah. Don't worry about saying it with 2. It's better, but it's definitely okay to say it with 1 as well. Now, some have a custom, which we're going to see right now is a wrong custom, that when they say Vaychulu Hashemayim Ba'aretz, what do? Yom HaShishi Vaychulu Hashemayim Ba'aretz. Now, I'm not talking about Kiddush. In Kiddush, it's the right thing to do. But in Tefilah, we don't need to say that Yom HaShishi. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot. What's the difference between the Kiddush and the Tefilah? So it says like this, the Mahalchu was the student of the Ari HaKadosh, the great Kabbalist that lived 450 years ago. And the Mahalchu brings down that if you count the letters or the words to be marked with, there are 35 words in the Kiddush in the first part, and then another 35 in the second part. Together, that's 70. So he said if you add 2 words to the Kiddush, you don't start from Vaychulu. If you start from Yom HaShishi, then you reach 72. And 72 is a holy name. It's called Ab, Ein Bet. It's something high in Kabbalah. So we refer to that. However, when it comes to the Tefilah, when people say Vaychulu Hashemayim Ba'aretz, there's only 35 words over there. You're not saying the second part that was saying Kiddush. So why are you adding 2 words? Meaning if the second part was there and you had 70, okay, maybe also here we add 2 to get to 72. But we don't need to do that anyway. We're not saying that. So why? So it seems like people that have that custom, it's based on the Kiddush, but really in the Kiddush you have a reason for it. No, you don't have a reason for it. Bottom line, it's also our minhag. When you say Vaychulu Hashemayim Ba'aretz after the Amidah, don't think you're adding something by saying Yom HaShishi. You're deducting. Anything that you don't need to add and you add, you're really deducting. Stick to Vaychulu Hashemayim, and that's the right way to do it. All right. Now, by the way, also in Kiddush, it brings here that the Moroccans that do it, what are they trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve initials. Because the initials of Yom HaShishi, Yud, and then Hey, Vaychulu Hashemayim, and then Vav, and then Hey, the initials of Yud Ke Vav Ke. So they reach Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what they're trying to achieve. But that's not our custom. That's not why we do it. We do it because we're trying to reach the 72, and therefore we don't do it. But if you see a Moroccan do it, and by that he's reaching the initials, don't get upset at him. Okay, he wants to do it, let him do it. But that's not our minhag. Now, what about bowing? When the Chazan says, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Yaakov, Hakel הגדול, הגיבור, מעניין כולו ברחמיו, שמיים וארץ, מחשבות בדברו, מתי מתים במאמרו. This reminds us of something. We've learned halachically that this is a little bit like a chazara. Friday night, you have a kind of a chazara of the Amidah. All right? Now, Why don't we add this whole part to begin with? Why don't we say after the Amidah all of this by Chulu? So we learned this once, at least according to the Peshat, the simple interpretation. The reason is because if people are going to be late Friday night to shul, back in the day, the shul was in the woods. It's not like here you have a nice building, you're in the city. It was outside of the town. So if someone would be late and then he would be praying Amidah and everybody already finished Alim and Shabbat and left the Kamisah, then the guy would have to walk home alone and it would be dangerous. And because of that, on Friday night, they said, no, let's make the Tefilah a little bit longer so that those that came late and now they're stuck in Amidah, we won't finish the Tefilah so fast. We'll add this part, like etc. But it's kind of a chazara. I'll give you another reason why it's kind of a chazara.
Ziv, are you saying that those guys who are late, they don't pray that part? They just skip it so they can catch up?
No, but it gives them more time to catch up with the crowd. Meaning if
Because they're
that
there
part
long.
did not exist, the Chazan would finish Alim on the Shabbat, leave. Now the guy is like, okay, he doesn't have to say that in shul. If he were to leave and everybody's leaving with him, it's okay. He would say it on the way, but at least he won't be stuck in shul. Again, I'm saying that is according to the pshat, because you could argue, oh, today we don't have that. There's no scary stuff on the way, evil forces. We don't see that. We live in the city. But according to the Kabbalah, it's a different story. According to Kabbalah, this is like a chazara, and this is a very high thing, all right? But I want to prove to you why is it also like chazara. When do we say Kadish Titkabal? Kadish Titkabal, we say usually after the Amidah, all right? Or in Shacharit and in Mincha, we say it after the Amidah. In Arvit, we also say Kadish Titkabal. However, the Mekubalim hold that you do not do Oseh Shalom Bimromav, you do not move your leg backwards in Oseh Shalom Bimromav in a regular Kaddish. According to the Mekubalim, the only time you reverse when you say Oseh Shalom Bimromav in Kaddish is in Kaddish Titkabal. That's the only time. Why? Because you're finishing the what's really happening here. You were Chazan, you did Chazarat Hashatz, you did Chazara, but you never really did a Oseh Shalom Bimromav when you finished the Chazara. So now that you're doing Kaddish Titkabal, you're completing the Chazara that you never finished, and now you do the reverse that belongs to the Amidah. However, in Arvit, the Mekubalim would say, Arvit of Yom Chol, since there was no Chazara, when you do Kaddish Titkabal, no reverse. So the Mekubalim don't take 3 steps back when they do Kaddish Titkabal on Yom Chol. However, on Shabbat, even the Mekubalim would walk back or say Shalom Bimromav after the Arvit of Shabbat. Why? Why? There was no Chazara. The answer is, we kind of did a Chazara. This אלוקינו ואלוקי אבותינו, אלוקי אברהם, אלוקי יצחק ויעקב, והכלי הגדול והגיבור, קונה שמיים בארץ, מגן אבות מדברו. It's kind of a chazara. And therefore they hold that over there you would take 3 steps back. According to the Pshat, anytime you want to do Oseh Shalom Bimromav, do it. But those that follow the Kabbalah, only on Kaddish Titkabal and Arvit, on Friday night they would reverse. But Kaddish Titkabal and Yom Chol, they would not reverse. Anyway, I just brought this to show you that this thing is kind of considered a chazara, this Birkat Na'im Sheva. So where were we holding? So we mentioned that Rashi says that you need 2 people, but really other opinions think that it's sufficient even if you had 1. Then we spoke about the Yom HaShishi, that according to Kabbalah we need to get to 72, and according to the Moroccans they do it to reach Hashem, the initial Yom HaShishi V'Yichulu. Then we spoke about Na'im Korim B'Men Sheva, do we bow down in Na'im Sheva? So now we understand why I said all this. Because if this is like a chazara, then when I say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu, etc., until I get to Magen Avot Bidvaro Mechanitim B'Ma'amaro, if this is a chazara, then when we do chazara, when we say Magen Avraham, we bow. But if this is not a chazara, then there's no reason to bow. And really, according to the Peshat, which Yalkut Yosef holds like that opinion, don't bow because we don't hold that this is a chazara. It's like a chazara, but he says no. Don't be like the Mekubalim. Don't bow. He says, but if you see someone when he says Baruch Ata Hashem and he starts that whole chazara or Magen Avot, etc., he says don't rebuke him because he has it to rely on. Who does he have to rely on? He relies on the Mekubalim. The Mekubalim hold that this is like a full chazara, and therefore you need to bow down. I was once a chazan before I knew this halakha, many years ago, and I remember I bowed down because at the time my Rav was on the Kubal, so I followed what my Rav taught me. And I remember somebody from the crowd came up to me and said, "Hey, it's not right to bow in this. This is not the place to bow." I heard him. I said, then when I learned the halakha, I understood it could be that some opinions hold that it's not right to bow, but other opinions hold that it is right to bow, like the Mikubalim. And even the Pashtanim that say that it's not right to bow, say, but if someone does it, don't rebuke him because he has it to rely on. So I wasn't upset. I liked it. I liked it that the person showed that he's learning halakha. But now that we learned it together, we learned it more exactly. Really, according to the Peshat, if you want to follow the Yalkut Yosef, don't bow if you're Fazan in that point. But if you're going to do it, they shouldn't rebuke you because you have to rely on each other. And some people do that with Tefilah. People that follow the Yalkut. All right. Now regarding Berkat Me'en Sheva, this bracha, this Magen Avot, etc., Yalkut Yosef says it is read only in Bet Knesset. So if you have this like pirate minyan going on in your apartment, according to Yalkut Yosef, you shouldn't read this Berkat Me'en Sheva. He says, however, I don't know, Masharis, what do Masharis do if they're on a trip, let's say in a hotel, and they do their own minyan?
We don't read it. Don't read it. We don't read it.
Okay, very good. So we follow the minhag of the Yalkut Yosef.
Also, if it's a house of a mourner, we don't read it.
It's house of mourner. Okay, very interesting. Okay, the house of the mourner could be you're also not reading it because it's not a Bet Knesset. No, I mean, it's already not a Bet Knesset.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Oh, but maybe that's a good example to why you would be praying in someone's house and not in shul. So that's why we know that. I get where it came from. Okay. But he says, Yalkut Yosef, that in Jerusalem, some have the custom that since you are in Yerushalayim, it's all like kind of like a Bet Knesset, and therefore, no matter where you are in Yerushalayim, then you could read the Birkat Me'en Sheva. But he says, Tefilah, to begin with, tell these people not to do that. It's better even if you're in Yerushalayim, if you're not a shul, better not to say it, but if they do it, they have who to rely on. So we see a lot of these halachot they have who to rely on. You shouldn't be so strict. Don't jump quickly to tell a person he's doing something wrong. A lot of the times the person has what to rely on, even according to the other opinion. All right. Now regarding someone, we have time, right? Yeah. Now, what happens if a person made a mistake? It's Arvit Shabbat. He finished the Kadosh, and what did he do? He continued the Chonen la'adam dat. Ever happened to you? You're all tzaddikim. It happened to me. It happens. Says the Yalkut Yosef, and this is the halacha, that it's a bad sign. Meaning, it shows that you weren't in focus, so get back into focus, it says. And halachically, it says, if you already started saying, Ata chonen la'adam dat, finish the beracha. Don't say, hey, no, I just remembered. I have to go back to Ata kidashta, etc. So now, if you already started, continue. However, he says, when do you have to continue this bracha? When you thought in your mind that today is not Shabbat. You were somewhere far, you prayed, let's say, on your own, you started praying, and now you started saying Ata chonen, you forgot it's Shabbat. Then you have to continue. But if you knew it's Shabbat, but you were on autopilot, which sadly happens sometimes too often, we got to work on that we won't be on autopilot. If you're on autopilot, then you don't finish the beracha. Then when the Shulchan Aruch told us that we have to finish the bracha that we began, he was speaking when a person forgot that it's Shabbat. He didn't know it's Shabbat today. His mind was somewhere else. That person continues. But if it's not the case, and I think I heard Rav Woodward, the son-in-law of Rabbi saying, it could almost never happen. How much of us don't know that it's Shabbat today? Like maybe back in the day, those things could happen more often. I can't imagine someone today not knowing that it's Shabbat. So almost any time that if a person said by mistake at Tachanen, you should stop right there and go back to the real bracha at Akidashka. Now, what happens if you read the whole Amidah like that, and he did also Shalom Bimromar, and he never said the part of Shabbat, right? So what is the din over here? He says if that's the case, then he has to go back to the Tefilah and pray it again, because he never mentioned Shabbat. You have to mention the day of Shabbat, and he missed that. Now, what is the point that from there on you messed up and now you have to go back to the beginning? Just in akar aglav, if you remove his feet, right? That we commented that say shalom b'mama. But Yalkut Yosef mentions that when I tell you akar aglav, he says it doesn't have to mean that you actually move your feet. It could just mean that you were about to remove your feet, which means that if I'm used to saying, right before I move my feet, I have a custom. That's actually what I do. Right before I move my feet, I put in personal prayers. So if a person put in personal prayers, in his mind, he finished. He just added his personal prayers. So if I started adding my personal prayers, I really finished the Tefilah already. And therefore, if I remember now, I can't go back to Atakidashta. I have to do the whole Amidah again. You get this nuance that he's saying? He's saying it's not really about removing the feet. It's about the state where you are. You were about to move your feet. You just added something on your own, but I didn't move my feet yet. Doesn't matter. In your mindset, you're done with the part of the Tefilah. You're just adding your own parts now. You would still have to move back. So hopefully we all, this doesn't happen. Better to pray with an open siddur, especially Friday night. Right? It's good to, especially some of the Balim explain that when the Shabbat comes in, don't close your eyes. Open. So better to have your eyes open, look in the siddur, and that's the best recipe to not make a mistake in the Tefilah. What happens if on Mincha shel Shabbat, right before Motzei Shabbat, Mincha, then Seudah Shlishi, then Arvit, right? Mincha shel Shabbat, I made a mistake. I read a Mincha shel Chol, right? Now, Shabbat finished, and I said, oh my God, I read the wrong Mincha. Do I pray Arvit twice or not? All right. Now, what's the question here? Usually, when I made a mistake in Mincha, yeah, I pray Arvit twice. But over here, there's a question. Anybody want to guess? What's different over here? On Yom Chol, I missed Mincha, I pray Arvit twice. Why here is there a question? Anybody know?
The Amidah is different. The Amidah is different.
Exactly, Baruch. My purpose is to complete the Mincha shel Shabbat that I missed. But when I'm praying two Arvit shel Chol, I'm not helping the Mincha shel Shabbat. On Yom Chol, if I missed Mincha shel Chol, I pray Arvit shel Chol twice, it completes the Chol. But this was a completely different Tefilah that Giacomo was saying. So how does it help? Do I pray twice? Do I not pray twice? Says Yalkut Yosef, because of this question that we have, we don't know if we need to pray twice because it's a different Tefilah. He says, make a Tefilah that is called, anybody remember?
A donation. Donation.
Giacomo, happy Wednesday. You're a rock star today. A donation, Tefilat Nedava. Remember, that's like a master key. Tefilat Nedava, whenever you're stuck, although on Shabbat itself, we're not allowed to do Tefilat Nedava. There was no Korban Nedava on Shabbat. But since it's Motzei Shabbat, he says, you want to do another Tefilah, but have in mind the Nedava. What is the Tnai? What is the stipulation that we put in our mind before we give the Nedava? If I need to complete it, then let this be a completion. And if I don't need to complete it, then this Tefilah is a Nedava. It's a gift to Borei Olam, and that would be the right way to do it. All right, I think we will stop over here so that we don't go overboard with the next halakha. Rabotai, Chazak u'Baruch, tizku l'mitzvot.
Baruch.
Hello, we'll see you next week, Bezrat Hashem.
Chazak Baruch. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ziv.
Azak Baruch.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.